The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. I am a proud pony, which stands for Parent of Neurodiverse Individuals. So thrilled to be here with you guys. We have been away from doing these shows for several weeks for various and sundry reasons. One of them was that I have been battling this horrible cold, and if you watched the show with Dr. Graham Pichet yesterday, you saw me battling it. I still got a little bit going on today. You may see me pop a cough drop in and out. I apologize in advance, but I'm totally capable of being here with you, and I want to be here with you. I've missed you. I have missed you. How have you been? I hope that you'll write in and let us know, because today we're live. It is the 6th of August. Yes, it's Wednesday, August 6th, 2025, and we are live. We got a great guest today, so write in and tell us right now. We're live right now on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And you guys know that later on today, this show will podcast and it'll be available on all the podcasting platforms that you guys love to listen to us on. We hope that you guys are participating in all that. When you download the free download, you will get some advertising, because that's what literally keeps the lights that are shining on my face going. So we do need to do that. But I love it because the advertiser pays for the lights. You don't have to. So you get the content for free. But some of you have written to us and said you'd like to have it ad-free and you're willing to pay a little bit to do that. I want you to know we worked hard to keep that cost down to you. But if you want to, you can go to Glow. Chris has got it there for you on the screen, glow.fm/autismlive. And it's $5 a month. And when you subscribe, you not only get Autism Live, but you actually get everything that we do on the Autism Network, which of course includes Ask Dr. Doreen. They show up in your inbox, and you are able to download those, and they are ad-free. So there we are. If you want that, it's available to you. Or you can listen to the ads and go, woohoo, I didn't have to pay for this. Whatever flips your switch, we like to be able to bring the show to you in whatever format that you want it. So there's that. I also want to say our mission here always has remained the same. We really are now, I get confused about, are we in the 14th year, or we've done 14 years and we're in the 15th year? It's something having to do with that. I can't do the math. I'm not good at that. But that's how long we've been doing the show, a while. And our mission from day one was to provide information and inspiration to the autism community. And when we say autism community, of course, that starts with individuals who are themselves on the spectrum, but it also extends to include everyone who loves those individuals, because we think that that's also important, that with all of our voices risen. And by the way, I'm looking forward to the day when that we can just unequivocally say that that is the entire world. Either people on the spectrum or people who love people on the spectrum, right? That's what it should be. We're working towards that. We still have a little ways to go. There are people who don't get it. But today's show is going to add to how we can make that happen. But in any case, that is the community to whom we're speaking. We believe that when we include everybody in that conversation, that we can get to more support for individuals on the spectrum, more legislation for them, more rights that should already be there, but somehow don't seem to be. So in any case, we appreciate you guys for being here with us. I did want to say, where have I been? I think some of you know that when Dr. Graham Pichet went and repurchased CARD, because you know, if you're following the story thus far, Dr. Graham Pichet founded CARD, built CARD, made it into this beautiful, healthy, vibrant company with 275 offices around the country and affiliates around the world. And she decided she would retire, and she sold the company. And, a few years later, the company was in bankruptcy. And she made the decision to buy her company back in bankruptcy. Isn't that a story that should be on Netflix? I think so. Great story. But when she did, I also made the decision. I had been a part of CARD because my child was treated at CARD, and I came to work at CARD for many years, and then I left when the company, a while after the company was sold. But when she was back, I was back. So I had the wonderful opportunity to go with my adult son, who just graduated from college, who was a CARD client, and we went to tour. I believe we saw 14 different CARD offices and met with the staff and some of the families and talked with them and answered questions, but did presentations and got to know some of them. And it was just, one of the most amazing experiences, because 9 years before, when my son was much younger, we also did this, and he was just a kid, and we were touring the offices and and driving in between the offices and going places, and now he's an adult with something to say, and so it was just an amazing opportunity. I want to say thank you to all of the offices that hosted us, all of the families that we met. I met so many wonderful people who are in the middle of really incredible interventions with their kids, and it just really inspired me, you guys. There's still a lot of work to be done. There's still a lot of support that needs to be given, but I felt so privileged to have that opportunity. So that's where I've been. Every once in a while, I'll excuse myself to go do something like that, but it was life-changing. Really want to say that. I think both for me and for my son, the experience that we had and we went through was amazing. I always talk about CARD. We made a video at one point that said ABA, the Autism Miracle, in our living room. I'm very well aware of the fact that ABA is a controversial subject, and that for many of my friends who identify themselves as being autistic or on the spectrum are not fans of ABA. And I understand and respect that. I always invite them to come and see the kind of ABA that I'm talking about, because I saw my son being lifted up and told he was amazing and that he could do all kinds of things, and being helped to be able to find his way. And getting to hear him speak about that, don't even get me started. Because that's, at 14 different offices, I heard him speak about that. And it just, and hear him thanking them and saying, thank you for helping me to stand firmly on my own feet and learn the things that I needed to do so that I can make my own choices and do the things that I care about. Powerful stuff. But I know that it's not everybody's thing. I get it. And that for some people who had, things that were called ABA that weren't and were mistreated, it can be a very emotional subject. And I never want to disavow that. But I saw some amazing things. I saw kids that were having fun and learning. And if you are ever somebody who wants to see that, what I'm talking about, let me know. I'll make arrangements. I will take you there myself. Anyway, okay, we got to get to our topic of the day, our jargon of the day, so that we can get to our guest, because we have the amazing Grant Harris, who's going to be with us and talking about neurodiversity in the workplace from a place of real authenticity. So he's going to be joining us in just a couple of minutes. But we always like to visit the jargon of the day, and I love this jargon term because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about this term. So let's jump in here. We give you two different definitions. It used to be that we gave you one that was just full of jargon that you couldn't understand, so we could make fun of it. We just don't do that anymore. The definitions have gotten better. So let's take a look. And I love that this is from geekclubbooks.com. The concept that differences in brains wiring, including conditions such as autism, ADHD, and dyslexia, are not defective, but the result of natural variation in the human genome. Atypical thinking styles are recognized as valuable sources of insight, creativity, and innovation. How's that for a definition of neurodiversity? I included that because I really like this. I understand that some people are going to look at this and go, you know, I really was struck by a post that I saw while we were on the road about somebody saying, you know, that more severe types of autism, we need to be careful about grouping them together. And that it isn't always a gift. Somebody had posted that and said, let's remember that some aspects of this are disabling and that it isn't always a gift. But I love the idea that we can talk about how the brain is wired differently and maybe not put a label on it, and certainly not put a label on it for everybody. This makes me really happy. Let's go to our other definition. And I think this is the more simplistic one, a positive way of languaging unique ways of processing. And to use Temple Grandin's words, different, not less. And I feel very strongly that if we don't all come to this understanding, it's very hard. In today's environment, I feel like we've taken 7 steps backwards. I'm just going to be honest about that. But I guess that's part of experience, that pizza dough has to stretch and come back, and then we got to do the hard work of stretching it back. That we will get where we were and further because we have to. We absolutely have to. This is the world in which we need to leave to our children. And we've got to leave it better than we found it. And certainly on this topic, I know that there are a lot of parents like myself who feel very strongly, and I hope that for all of the adults who identify as self-advocates, I hope you know that we want to be strong allies. We don't always get it right. Phew, I don't get it right half the time. But we want to be strong allies because remember, part of our journey is that we need the world to be better at this because it is the world that our children, our adult children, are stepping into. So we don't have the same stake in it. We have a different stake in it, but it's very personal. Just want to be clear about that. I also want to address, because while we were, and you know, even at the start of the show, I always say I'm a pony, a parent of a neurodiverse individual. And I get some kickback from that from time to time from people. And on the trip, I had one person who said, you realize you're saying that wrong, right? That it should be that you're a parent of a neurodivergent individual. And I said, here's the thing. That's not the word that my son uses for a very specific reason. Because my understanding is that neurodiversity is all the complexity, and that a person can't, the typical explanation is you wouldn't refer to a person as neurodiverse, you would refer to them as being neurodivergent. I would say to you, though, that my son's logic on this, first of all, I'm going to say whatever my son says, right? Because I believe in letting people choose the words to describe them, not telling them what words to describe them. So I would never tell my son, no, you're neurodivergent. Ooh, that wouldn't happen. But also his logic on this is that he says, you know, my brain works in a very specific way, but I am capable, I have built skills enough that I'm capable of going into a room full of people who are not neurodivergent, and I can adjust what I'm doing so that I can communicate effectively with them. So that's one thing. But then I can go into a room full of individuals who are neurodivergent, and I can adjust the way that I am speaking so that I can communicate very effectively with them. And in that way, he considers himself neurodiverse, which I think actually makes sense. And even if it didn't, I would still use it because those are the words that he gives me to say. All of which to say, it is critical for us here, I think for a lot of time here, and you guys can be looking at the old videos because they're there. You can go to YouTube and watch videos when my hair was brown. That's a long time ago. But you can, there are videos of my son when he was 8 years old, and he's 22 now. We've been here a minute. And so you can watch some of the old videos, and we were in the beginning very entrenched in a certain type of language, largely because it was already coming from my son. My son is somebody when he was younger that I remember he was maybe 7 years old, and he was being interviewed by a news person who said, so Jem, you're autistic. And my 7-year-old son said, no, I'm not autistic. I have autism. He was stating his preference for how he wanted those words to be said around him. So those were the words that we were using. And what we learned, because I want to be somebody who's always learning, want to be in the front row, was that wasn't the case for everybody. That was my 8-year-old son. And by the way, by the time my son was 10, his words had changed. He was using different words. And I've met so many wonderful people on this journey who have different ways of describing their relationship with autism. I just want to say it is critical to mission one here for us, if we're going to be providing information and inspiration to that larger autism community, that we really believe we have to make room. If we're really going to say neurodiversity, we have to make room for all of the language and for people's preference, because I'll tell you, I've met a couple of people who are like, I don't really care. I don't really care. But most of the people that I've met, it's how they're identifying a portion of their life, or it's how they're identifying themselves. It matters greatly to them. So, I stand by whatever words somebody wants to use to describe themselves. We want to embrace that. We don't always get it right, but we want to embrace that. So this all brings me to our guest today, who I hope is going to educate me and all of us even more on this subject and many other subjects. Because Grant Harris is about to join us. I want you to know he's got a bunch of letters after his name, and we're going to try to sort through what they all mean. MBA, obviously. We kind of know what that is. CDE, which is a Certified Diversity Executive. Never heard of that before myself, so I'm excited to know more about that. And he is well known as a neurodiversity champion. I think that's a wonderful moniker. He is also an organizational culture specialist. Well, I've never heard of that before, but that sounds lovely to me, because having just come from all of these offices, I was able to write an email to Dr. Grampiche yesterday about how proud I am of the culture that I'm seeing in these centers of acceptance, and that we have staff who identify, and they were talking about what a wonderful job this is for them and how included they are. So I'm all about culture specialist. Woo, love that. He is also a 3-time author. He is the founder of GTH Consulting, which we'll talk with him about that. But he helps organizations navigate neurodiversity in the workplace. Excuse me. So how critical is that now? Possibly more than ever. And so we're thrilled to welcome him to the show for the first time. We're talking to Grant Harris. Grant, how are you?
Hello. I am well. How are you, Shannon?
I am better that you're here, because I want to be educated on so many of these things. First of all, because I just gave our spiel about it's important to us to allow people to self-identify with the words that they choose. What words do you choose to describe your relationship to autism, Grant?
I appreciate that. And I was listening in, Shannon. I have to tell you that I'm highly impressed with your theory and the way that you have gone about living life with your son. And I believe that you are a true champion for autism and neurodiversity.
Oh,
so the way that I identify with neurodiversity and the way that I express it and explain it to organizations, leaders, managers, individuals, and groups is there's neurodiversity, there's being neurodivergent, and then third, there's a term that I call neurodistinct. And
Ooh.
I identify as being neurodistinct.
Woo!
So the neurodiversity that you described earlier is true. All the different ways, all the different ways that the brain and the body function is neurodiversity. We all have a brain, which is the same, but the way that that brain functions and the way that that body functions is different. Then neurodivergent, which the base of that divergent is either left or right of center, and the center is the norm, and that's where we get neurotypical. That's where we get the word normal, which I do not like personally.
Right. Me neither.
But diverging means you're different somehow, and the textbook definition of diverging is usually has a negative connotation. It's not always good.
Yeah.
And last but not least is neurodistinct. And in my opinion, we are all distinct human beings in the way that we are made, and we all deserve to live a life full of distinction. So I describe myself as neurodistinct, and I happen to be specifically autistic, and I describe myself as an autistic person. I use identity first language, but as like you do, I respect anyone and everyone and how they choose to self-identify.
Well, I love all of that. I have never heard neurodistinct before, but woo, we're going to add that to the lexicon. That's wonderful. And thank you for all. Look, we've already been educated, you guys. He's been here for 30 seconds, and we've already been educated. So, Grant, tell us a little bit about your background, and because then we want to get into talking about neurodiversity in the workplace, because this is a hot topic that seems to be in trouble. But give us your background first.
Yeah, certainly. I'm a Washingtonian by trade, so DC is home for me. Fortunately, I've been able to travel the country and travel the world and experience different cultures. I'm a family man. I have a wife and 3 kids. My wife also is ADHD, so a long time she's known and she's chosen to be medicated. So neurodiversity is near and dear to my heart from that perspective. In my personal life, I'm a former college athlete. I'm a Hall of Fame athlete, very proud of that. Once an athlete, always an athlete. I've had many different jobs in my day. I've had about 3 careers, and I didn't necessarily understand earlier on in life how my particular neurodistinct traits played into that. I do now. I have a better understanding. So I spent time in management consulting. I've spent time in education. I taught autistic kids before I ever knew I was autistic, which is interesting. So I spent time as a special educator at both K-12 and higher education levels. And I've also spent time being an entrepreneur, working with government entities, for-profit, nonprofit organizations to help them become more excellent in their neuro-inclusive policies, practices, and procedures.
All of which we're going to talk about.
So I was late diagnosed as autistic about 4 years ago. So I'm the first and the only in my family to be formally diagnosed with a disability and specifically diagnosed as autistic. So that's a little bit about me on the personal side.
And I want to talk about like so many different things. My mind is going, boo. But I want to go back to you were an educator working with children on the spectrum, and you did not know that you were also someone who could qualify for that diagnosis. What kinds of things were you seeing, and what kinds of bells was it ringing in your head? Like, were you starting, when you were working with these kids, did you start to notice some similarities?
So no bells at the time. I have my wife to thank for that. She was the one that rang the big bell when it came to the potential of me being diagnosed and being autistic. However, when I look back on my time there, the routine, the structure, the organization, the way that I went about communicating with not only the students, but also my fellow educators, I could certainly see my autistic traits coming out in those things. The music that I listened to when I was lesson planning, the different approaches that I took the problem solving. All of these things at the time, I thought that was my personality. That's how I operated. But I did not attribute them in any way, shape, or form to being autistic, with a deeper understanding of how I could utilize those traits, not only within a classroom, within the education sphere, but also within entrepreneurship. I was in a high free and reduced lunch, meaning low income, English as a second language. And I was in the most restrictive environments, meaning the students that I taught basically stayed in one or two classrooms for their entire educational career. That's the life that I was in. I saw some of those ABA practices that you were mentioning, some good, some not so good.
Yeah.
I do not call myself an ABA expert, and I certainly wasn't at the time, but I was introduced to those things and saw how some of the reactions were positive and some of them were not so much.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting time, but at that point, at that specific time, there were no bells or whistles going off about me personally being autistic. But after the fact, I see that my connection with those students, the way that I operated, and the way that I didn't operate, certainly can be attributed to my autistic traits.
Interesting. Now, we talked before about if I ever ask anything that's too personal, please feel free to say, it's too personal. But I'm going to ask, what was it your wife was seeing that led her to believe that you were autistic?
I appreciate the question, Shannon. I have done dozens on dozens of podcasts, and I've had this conversation, and I'm proud to have the conversation because I certainly am grateful to my wife in that stage of our lives that led to where I am now, because I probably would not have sought a diagnosis. I probably wouldn't be having the conversation with you. I most likely wouldn't have built any of the work that I've been able to do since my diagnosis if I did not have that time in my life.
Yeah.
So the long and short of it is, and if any of your audience has been married or in a significant relationship, they know that communication can be a roller coaster. Sometimes it's awesome and you're hitting on all cylinders. Other times you're failing and you just can't get it right. You're butting heads. And mind you, my wife is ADHD, so she thinks and feels and operates very differently than I do, even now knowing my conditions and my traits before not being aware of them and how I was managing them or mismanaging them. So we were having difficulty communicating, and she sent me an article. It was a listicle, 10 things about your spouse that might make them autistic, something of that nature.
Wow.
I read it, and about 8 of those things I immediately identified with. And I said, yeah, that's me, or yeah, I think that way. So that was the trigger. And at that time, I had, like I said, been teaching autistic kids, and I had been doing diversity work. So I had heard of the term neurodiversity. I obviously knew that autistic people existed in that realm, but I wasn't digging deeper, and I wasn't applying those things to me, myself, and I until my wife brought it to my attention. And then here I am talking to you now.
Was it hard? Because so many people write in and say to us, I think this is me, but they tell us it's really hard to get an adult diagnosis. Did you find it that way?
I am extremely privileged in my journey of diagnosis, and I understand that it is not like that for most people. It is not as easy as it was for me, logistically as it was for me, for most people, period, especially people of color, especially Black people, especially women. It's not that easy. So I was fortunate to have been in an education career where I was around autistic people. And in education, more often than not, you were open to different forms of thinking and different forms of pursuit. Also, I was fortunate enough to be raised by a family that did not have a negative bias against medicine. Most people of color, and specifically Black people in this country, have had nothing but negative experiences with the medical field. When it comes to mental health, physical health, or otherwise, they've had bad experiences. That wasn't necessarily the case for my family growing up, so they did not shun the medical field like a lot of people of color and Black people do in this country, rightfully so. Um, Fortunately, I had a colleague who is a psychologist. She owns her own psychology practice, and she referred me to the office that I received my diagnosis through. Fortunately, that office was less than an hour drive away, and I was familiar with that area because I used to live there. I still had to go through multiple tests, and that was obviously a strain on my schedule, but that was the most difficult part. And again, Shannon, I stress the fact that I understand that that is atypical.
Yeah.
Most people don't have access to a psychologist friend that can make a referral.
Yeah.
Most people have to travel well over an hour, especially in rural environments, to get to adequate healthcare.
Yeah.
Most people cannot afford it. It was not cheap for me, but I was in a position to be able to afford it. Although we paid on our own, insurance did not assist in any way, shape, or form. So I'm extremely fortunate and blessed to be able to say those things because it is not that way for the majority of people seeking diagnosis.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. But when you got the diagnosis, what did it feel like for you, Grant? Because I've heard some that it's very emotional for some people. That more than one person has said to me, I felt like I got to meet myself for the first time. Did you experience any of that?
So my wife will tell you that I'm not the most emotional person on the planet. I've been trying to work on that. So again, I think my story is a bit different because I had been around autistic people and autistic kids who are very different because they're not masking as much as autistic adults.
Right.
They are who they are. They haven't had years of experience like I had at that point of trying to do things the right way, quote unquote.
Right.
So I think that was a little bit different. And I also think it was different because I had already been doing diversity work, looking at the different ways that people can think about themselves and how they fit into society. So I think I had a quote unquote easier time. However, I like to tell people that I am an onion without the smell because I have multiple layers. So I had to grapple with now being a person with a disability. Now, when I never thought that I was a person with a disability before. And then I had to grapple with being autistic, which is being neurodistinct. At that time, I didn't have a language of neurodistinct. I would have said neurodivergent at that time, which was the second layer. And then the third layer specifically being autistic. So the biggest thing and still the biggest adjustment that I have had to reckon with is my wife is ADHD and she can take a pill. And when she takes that pill, she feels better. She's operating differently. If any of your audience has ever seen the movie Limitless, when the guy takes the pill and then he's in a different realm and he knows all and sees all, she equates her experience to that. That's the biggest thing that I still have difficulty swallowing, no pun intended, is the fact that I can't take a pill.
Yeah.
I am who I am, and I have to manage myself, my thoughts, my mannerisms, my behaviors, and I have to consciously work on things. Not that my wife does or anyone who is ADHD doesn't have to consciously work on themselves, but there is that support system through medication that I don't have. And that's been the biggest difficulty for me, being a person with a disability. I was fully accepting of that. I have different sets of rights that I didn't have before. Being neurodistinct, as I've evolved in that language, I think is pretty awesome and pretty cool because I worked with those autistic kids and I saw all of their beautiful mannerisms and traits, but not being able to adjust or refine the parts of my character and the parts of my traits that are difficult to swallow for other people, that hold me back in certain ways, shapes, and forms. That's been the most difficult part for me.
Well, and there's a part of me that just wants to cry. I am the emotional person, but I want us to get to a place where, like, I understand, even for those of us that, are not identifying as being neuro distinct or neurodiverse. There are times when I have to walk into a room and I know I'm going to have to be slightly different than my completely authentic self to fit in. And I can tolerate that for a little while. I cannot begin to understand what it is like for someone like you or my son or any of my friends, because I know that it's got to be that on steroids times a million. But I want us all to get to a place where, why can't we just accept people for who they are? There is a part of me that wants to say to you, but Grant, people need to start respecting who you are. I realize that it's a continuum, and there's, obviously, if someone's method of communicating is walking up and slapping someone, that has an impact on the other person, and there are boundaries to everything. But I want us to get to a place where we're just more accepting. And maybe that's what leads into the workplace. Because this is where we see such a conundrum that we have brilliant, talented people that could add so much to a workplace, but maybe they have a trait that is bothering someone. I kind of want to say, let's work on the person who's bothered by that more than the genius that we want doing the job. But I get it. We're not entirely there yet. But that frustrates me, to be honest. That frustrates me. Why aren't we working on it that way? I'll let you discuss that if you want to, but let's talk about neurodiversity in the workplace. You want to talk about redesigning systems for inclusion from the boardroom to the mailroom. And I appreciate that, because I think it should be across that spectrum. And I think that sometimes it is, but it isn't always disclosed, and it's a lot of masking. What are your thoughts?
So I appreciate your candidness about being in the workplace and the person who has the problem with the neurodistinct person and the way they show up, having to work on that. Well, I say a couple of things to that. Yes and yes. There have been recently in the news and in the media, people who have displayed poor behavior in the workplace, and they blame it on the fact that they are autistic specifically.
Yeah.
And that somehow that's an excuse or a reason for them acting the way that they do. And I don't subscribe to that. And like you said, you can't walk up to people and smack them in the face and say, oh, well, I did that just because I'm autistic. And we cannot expect, so other people should not expect that of the autistic community. And I believe the autistic community can't always expect every person that they come in contact with to immediately accept or understand and change all of their mannerisms and behaviors to match them as well. So what I talk about in my discussions with organizational leaders and departments is moving from awareness to acceptance and moving from acceptance to action. So awareness to acceptance and from acceptance to action. That's under the umbrella of what I call moving from compliance to community. Compliance mindset is, okay, we have enough people of color, we have enough women, we have enough disabled people, we check that box and we're good to go. And now we're an inclusive organization, which we all know or should know is false, and that misses the mark. Yeah. Moving towards community is understanding, okay, we have these people of color, we have these women, we have these disabled people. Who is the most impacted, and how do we reach them first? Who is the least impacted, and how do we ensure that they still feel included and not ostracized? So that's the framework or the mindset, and I have a framework within that mindset, but that's the mindset approach that I take, and specifically with neurodiversity and autism is moving from awareness to acceptance and acceptance to action. And that action, like you said, could be the neurotypical person takes a step back and understands that, and the autistic person may not be looking them in the eye the entire time that they speak, and not looking at that as disrespect, but understanding that that's a social, emotional way of communicating.
Yeah.
So these types of things and conversations are had, and there are ways practically that I dig deeper and go different levels in order to extrapolate that throughout an organization. When we talk about from the boardroom to the mailroom, that means that neurodiversity hits us all. It impacts every employee from the new intern to the seasoned CEO and everywhere in between. That plays out in the numbers because I look at neurodiversity in the workplace from a human capital and from a financial capital perspective. Both of those need to be high functioning, no pun intended. Both of those need to be high functioning in order to achieve excellence within an organization.
Yeah. So if a company is, and listen, we're trying very hard to embrace the companies who are still embracing inclusion and making that a part of their everyday, regardless of what happens in Washington. I know my family's trying really hard to make sure we shop at places that have demonstrated commitment to that, ongoing commitment to that, and not going to places, whenever possible, that demonstrated that, oh, if it's not going to be legislated, then we're not interested in that. As far as I'm concerned, those people don't need my money. But that's me, and everybody has to do their own thing. But if a company is saying, listen, we are devoted to inclusion and we want to make it work at that highest level that we can because we know it's good for us, they can hire you as a consultant and you'll come in and help them to build that rich culture. Am I correct?
Correct, 100%. And that takes time, energy, and effort. And the relationship is just that it's not a transaction. So it's not a hire me or any other consultant that does the work that I do. It's not a hire and then in 30 days, your problem is solved. You're inclusive or you're neuro-inclusive,
right,
and you're good to go, and you never need to touch it or look at it again. And I'm also saying that my job is to make sure is to kind of work myself out of a job.
Yes.
Is because I want to come in and have the organization be able to thrive on its own, give it the tools and the resources and the support and the strategy necessary to go through those difficult times. And I'm there to hold the organization's hand. But once, just like a toddler and just like child rearing, I have 3 kids of my own. You get them crawling, you get them walking, you get them running, and then you have to let them go on their own. But at that time, hopefully they have the tools and the resources necessary to be as neuro-inclusive as possible.
Yeah.
But yes, that is the relationship. And that relationship starts with senior leadership. And I say it starts there because they're the decision makers in the organization. But that's why I specifically say that neurodiversity goes all the way to the mailroom, wherever your mailroom is in your organization. Because while decisions may be happening at the top, the most impacted people are in the mailroom and in between. They're not at the top making those decisions. So that's the conversations, and those are the time that's spent is shaping those strategies, what they look like online, what they look like offline, and doing them with fidelity. And with fidelity means consistency.
Yeah.
And I try to impart in organizations the 3 C's with communication being clear, concise, and consistent. Is your message around being neuro-inclusive clear internally and externally? Is your message concise? Can people pick it up and digest it easily and quickly? And third, is it consistent?
Yeah.
So Monday through Friday, quarter 1 to quarter 4, year 1 to year 5, while the way that the message is displayed might change because companies and people and organizations evolve, but consistently they are putting forth the effort and the action, and they're backing up what they say with what they do. That's the consistency part.
Yeah, and that creates culture, not policy. Because you can put policy out all you want, but if you don't have the culture, you're not getting it done. So Grant, if people want to hire you, where would they go?
So one of a couple places. You can find me at my website, compliance2community.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can search me, and I'll have all this information for your audience in the show notes as well. And I will provide you my link tree. My link tree has all of my voice, my writing, my bios, my website, my access. It's a website of 4 websites, and it's all in one place.
Okay.
So compliance2community.com. You can search me on LinkedIn, and I'll also provide my link tree, and your audience can have that as well.
Thank you. We appreciate that. So compliance2community.com, you guys. That's if you want to know more, if you want to talk with Grant, if you want to hire Grant. I'm so interested in this topic, Grant. Maximizing manhood as a Black neurodivergent professional. Wow, that's a really powerful thing. And I know this is a topic that is really trending right now, talking about not losing the idea of manhood. I'm a woman. I don't pretend to completely understand this. I sit in the front row, teach. What do you want to say? Yeah.
The long and short of it is that the intersection of, we all have intersecting personalities, intersecting demographics and psychographics. Demographics are your age, your gender, where you live. Psychographics are what you think about, what you watch, what you read, how you spend your money, these types of things. So we all have these intersecting levels to us. But being a Black man in America is not easy for all the reasons that we could have a whole nother show to talk about.
Sure.
All of the inequities. Being a Black woman or a person of color in America is not easy any point in time, but especially now. But when you look at being late diagnosed, when you look at the incidence of self-harm and police brutality, when you look at the lack of Black men in high leadership and high visibility positions, or if they are there, they don't stay there for very long. All of these things make it very difficult. And then you throw in the fact that you throw in neurodiversity or being neurodistinct and being autistic, when Black men are already seen usually as aggressive. They are associated with crime and violence. And for a person like me, that my facial expressions don't always match the words that I'm saying. For many folks, I come off differently than what I'm thinking internally or how I'm intending to approach people. So at the corporate level, and all of the nuances that come into corporate jargon, all of the social aspects of spending time outside the job, spending time, quote unquote, networking, spending time building relationships one-on-one and having trusted bonds of eye contact, touching and shaking hands, and these types of things that many autistic people do not contribute to or make them uncomfortable in certain ways or have to mask. All of these things are intricacies that Black neurodivergent men and professionals have to navigate in the workplace. So I hosted and still connect with a group of Black men in corporate America who describe themselves as neurodistinct and or neurodivergent, to have these types of conversations so that they can feel seen and heard, and that they have someone that they can talk to or a group of people that they can talk to and feel safe in that environment to hone themselves and to help shape the culture of others.
What a powerful thing. But of course, I guess what I want to ask you is, as a white woman, is there something that I can do? Like, is there?
Well, you're doing it. You're doing it, Shannon. Having this show, having these conversations, asking the question and out of authenticity. Now, not every person of color, and again, we can have different shows just around this topic, but asking the question of what can I do, how can I show up, and having that being genuine and authentic, and from a place of community, like I said,
Yeah.
not out of the fact, oh, well, I saw it on TV and that was so horrible, and now let me help, when these things in corporate America have been going on since the founding of the country.
Yeah.
It's not new. Neurodiversity is not new. Being a person of color in this country and having all of the inequities that go along with that are not new. And then to have someone come up and say, well, oh, what can I do because they saw a George Floyd, or we had to go through a pandemic, that rings as kind of hollow and false. Not that it should be discarded, because at least someone's asking,
Yeah.
but it should come in the times, not in the desperate times. That should be shown in all the times, just because of the understanding of what these types of people go through on a regular basis, without it having to be spurred by a pandemic or a global killing that everybody got to see when they were sitting on their couch for that time.
Yeah.
So that's the difficult line to walk for some people. And I am not here to tell you, Shannon, specifically what you can do. That's up to you as a person.
But I asked.
Yeah, but you did ask, and you're
did.
doing it. Hosting a show like this for the time that you have been, giving people an opportunity to have conversations, bringing folks on like myself, being neuro-inclusive with your conversation around, I understand that some people don't like ABA for all the reasons, but this was my experience.
Yeah.
All of those things are things that you should be doing and you should continue to do, because people like you and shows like this is how we ultimately build community over time.
And we want to build community. My goodness, we have to. Okay, we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I want to talk. I want you to talk about the role of leadership in promoting neurodiversity, because I have to say, I feel like we're at a real impasse right now. I have struggled with not getting discouraged. That I feel like some of the work that was done, which was not enough, has been set back. So what are your thoughts on the role of leadership in promoting neurodiversity?
A lot. So in the corporate world, and in the corporate world, and I don't know how true it is, and some of these stats get thrown around by people, but I'm sure there's some shred of truth to it, that upwards of like 40% of the Fortune 500 CEOs identify as dyslexic. However, they do that privately, in private conversations with, and these things get leaked and all of that. But the point is that people at the highest echelons of leadership personally identify, but externally hide that and mask that, because there's still stigma. Yeah. There's still shame around these concepts. So how do the highest leaders and how do hiring managers and organizational leaders change that? Is by having conversations, talking about it more, and not talking about it externally as in, we pledge to do this or we pledge this much money. No, internal. And this is where one of the frameworks that I built called RACE, R-A-C-E, is the first, the acronym, the first letter is recognize. Recognize who and where you are. That could be an organization and that could be a person. Who are you? Who are your core values? What are your core values as a person? What are your core values as an organization? And are you upholding those? And should they change? And where are you in your journey as a person, as a leader? Where are you in your journey of neurodiversity, or moving from awareness to acceptance? I'm aware, Shannon, that you're a person. I'm aware that you're here, but that doesn't mean that I have to accept you. That doesn't mean that I have to respect you.
Yeah.
But that's the process to go through to get to ultimate action. So first is recognize who and where you are in that journey. And then the A is to acknowledge your intent and your impact. People say something and they say, oh, well, I didn't mean that. Well, you still had an impact on a person. Yeah. People did something. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Well, you still had that impact on that person or the organization. So you have to be aware and acknowledge your intent and your impact. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I still did. I acknowledge that. and this is what I'm going to do to kind of rectify it. The C is cultivate, and cultivate means that's where you get educated. That's where you read, you get immersed in learning more about yourself and the people around you so that you can cultivate all that education. And then the last is E, which is engage. It always comes to engagement. It always comes to action. You can think about yourself, you can talk to other people, but you have to engage and you have to act on the education that you attained. And you have to engage with that acknowledgement, and you have to engage with that recognition of who and where you are. So that's the approach that I take in the conversations and the work that I lead with organizational leaders.
Well, I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing, Grant. I feel like it's very necessary and important, and perhaps maybe now more than ever. You know, and I want you to know, and I hope for the people who are listening who are like of this same mindset, you know, when I was saying before about we need to create the world in which we leave our children. And I am not comfortable, you know, with the world that we have created right now for our children. And especially when our kids are unique and uniquely capable, with challenges in some areas, but uniquely capable in other areas. And it starts with us. I'm acutely aware of that, but sometimes it feels overwhelming. And, you know, so I love knowing that people like you are doing what you're doing and speaking to people at the highest level and helping them to be able to see it. And you are uniquely qualified to be able to bring this message in so many ways, which is a wonderful thing. Now, I also mentioned before, because we're running out of time, that you're an author. You have 3 books. Do you want to take a second and talk about your books and where people can find them?
Yes, I am a 3-time published author. I did not plan to be an author. I fell into an opportunity to become an author, and I took that chance. I've written 3 books, none of which have anything to do with neurodiversity. I wrote them before I had a full understanding, or right on the cusp of my diagnosis. But the first is all about diversity, equity, and inclusion frameworks and why these frameworks should exist and how to implement them. All of them take a practical approach. They are aimed at hiring managers, at senior leaders, and within organizations. And it doesn't matter if it's nonprofit, for-profit, small or large. They're practical in nature. They all have roadmaps set out to say, well, this is a way that you could achieve success, because there's more than one way, but I put out my roadmap. So the first is about DEI frameworks. The second is about implicit bias and how our biases and how our prejudices impact the work around us. And the third is about inclusive leadership. So how do leaders show inclusivity as a general term and general umbrella? And now my practice works on the neural inclusion part, because the book, again, doesn't touch on that specific topic, but I bring that in with the work that I do physically with these organizations.
It's very interesting how your path took you. Very, very interesting. It's funny to me that, was it 2 years or 3 years ago that we were hearing across the board that the number one topic among CEOs was the DEI initiative, that was what was being embraced, and that's what, but I have to say that our community was saying, but it's not including neurodiversity. You guys are missing the boat there. And of course now it is, I don't know if it's the number one topic, but not in the right direction. So it's interesting to me that you were always a part of this community working for inclusion, and then it was very personally brought home to you that there's another piece to this that needs more conversation. So Grant, thank you. Thank you for what
Oh,
you're doing. Thank you for utilizing your life to bring this to more people's attention, to help them to create a culture. So often I see companies, listen, there's nothing that I have bad to say about a job coach, right? But
mm,
it's a lot of companies think we'll just hire a job coach for this individual and that'll take care of it. But it's missing the boat on that culture.
mm.
Everybody got to get a little bit more aware uh, because that's the way that it works. So thank
Yes.
you for everything that you're doing. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Tell us your website
Thank you
again.
for having me. Yeah, thank you for having me, Shannon. It's been a pleasure. Compliance to community.com. And you can find all of my writings and my books on LinkedIn as well.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Take care.
Thank you.
Take
It's
care.
been great.
I want to say in closing, what a great guest. But I want to say hi to Rodney. Rodney, you wrote in and said hello. We're so glad that you're here with us. Guys, we're back doing live shows. And what a wonderful, I thoroughly enjoyed that. I hope you guys did too. We are back next week. We've got amazing guests for you. And Ask Dr. Doreen, don't forget that we're going to talk about that really controversial term, recovery. Next week. What it means, what it doesn't mean, why it may not be your word. I don't use that word anymore, but I certainly talk about the concept. And I'm going to talk about that concept until I stop breathing. But I don't use the word anymore because I know it's such an incendiary word. So we're going to talk about all of that with Dr. Grant Pichet on Tuesday. I think you're not going to want to miss it. Bring your controversial thoughts. Let's talk about it. Because if we can't have a conversation, what are we doing? Right? And you get to bring your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions, all of it. We'll look forward to that. Okay. But until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.